What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to an episode of The Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me, Shannon White, as always. Shannon, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing wonderful. Just a beautiful day and tons to talk about. And I'm excited and ready to roll.
Yeah, me too. It's been a pretty much a newsworthy night and day. Last night,
Yes.
breaking very late, Russell Wilson, nine-time Pro Bowler, is signing a one-year deal for the vet minimum, $1.2 million, to be the next quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Were you surprised at that news and maybe perhaps the timing? And when that news came out, it broke super late.
Yeah, I thought that they would want to make that more of a, middle of the day prime time thing. And like you said, uh, I was getting ready for bed and I picked my phone up and seen all these, announcements. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess they, wanted to have it announced before, the first day of legal tampering. But yeah, I was really shocked. Um, everybody knows I was on record. I was against this uh, because of a team chemistry standpoint. His last year in Seattle, lots of problems, especially with his receivers, and they had a falling out.
Mhm.
Then he went to Denver, and it was a disaster. Uh, he couldn't play with the one coach. They did not do well together, and then him and Sean Payton was a terrible match. But the thing that concerned me is none of his teammates came to support him. Nobody.
Mhm.
I mean, and if you talk to, I have friends that are Broncos fans. They said he did not have any chemistry within the locker room. So he was off my list. Didn't want him. Well, if you could get a proven starter, as you say, 9-time Pro Bowler, been to 2 Super Bowls, won one, and get him for the league minimum, which is 1.2, I think,
Mhm.
with all the holes the Steelers have. And everybody keeps saying, "Oh, the Steelers are contenders." No, they've just released 7 guys that were starters at some point last year. They have to replenish that, and there's only so many draft picks. They by releasing all those guys, they cleared up $28 million cap space, but they're
Mhm.
going to have to use all that. And if they would have had to use it, let's say, went for a Justin Fields, and you're going to have to pay him that 5th-year deal when you bring him in, and you're also giving up a draft capital or something. Might only be a fourth now. But
Or
I
less.
understand why they went with Wilson because financially it made the most sense. And that's what I've wanted all along. I want them to build the roster to make it to where they are a contending team. Then you find your quarterback of the future. Uh, and so I understand why they did it. And now we just got to hope for the best. I will say this, I do think it's more of an open competition than a lot of people do. I think that they did not promise Russ he's going to be the starter. I think they promised him he will get a chance to compete for that position because that's what they said at the end of the season, that Pickett has to have competition. They're going to have an open quarterback competition, and that's the only way you're going to have your best product on the field.
Well, when it comes to the possibility of a competition, I'm more on the side of I doubt it. This situation highly reminds me of the time when Mason Rudolph was the only quarterback on the team, and the Steelers and general manager at that time, Kevin Colbert, was coming out saying that they had full faith in him, and if they had to play a game, the next day they would have full faith in him being the starter and his capabilities. And then that free agency, first day of free agency, they get a veteran quarterback, a guy that in Mitch Trubisky, who was the second overall pick, and then go out and draft a first round pick in or first round quarterback, thus burying Mason Rudolph and never really giving him a chance. And I don't think that necessarily is going to happen to Pickett. But when it comes to Russell, to me, why would he sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers if he was going to be a backup or he wasn't given the opportunity to be the guy, or wasn't the guy? I'm sorry. Why would he sign if he wasn't given or told that it wasn't his job to lose? Reason being, I say that is if there's a chance that he's going to be a backup, why would he sign now? He can wait. Quarterbacks get hurt quite a bit. In fact, last season, how many quarterbacks got hurt in the NFL? Only one quarterback in the AFC North started and finished the year, and that was Lamar Jackson. And so With that being said, he could wait and then somebody go down and then at that moment go in. He's getting paid anyways. Denver's paying him regardless. So my thing is, why sign now unless he's being told this is your job, to lose. Now, obviously, if he goes in there and stinks up the joint and Kenny Pickett does something amazing, then I think that there's the possibility that he jumps in. But I don't think it's as close of a competition as maybe perhaps people are thinking. I've learned
Well, the
when
the
it comes.
only thing that will say is Russell Wilson was not in high demand. Based on everything that, if you will read the tea leaves, teams were not pursuing him.
Mhm.
The Giants give him a quick interview. It was not very long, and then he left Newark, come to Pittsburgh. We were hearing rumors of what the Raiders are really interested in going after at quarterback. Um, there was just not a lot of landing spots that he was going to be promised the starting position. And that's incredible for a guy with his accolades, his experience, and his accomplishments. But he is 36 years old, and he is considered now to be a issue in the locker room. And any team that's trying, you have to have a certain structure in place to be able to handle a Russell Wilson. And I think that Mike Tomlin is prepared for this. And he wanted to play for Mike Tomlin. He said all along he wanted to play for Mike Tomlin. And the Steelers have the legacy and the history. But we have to realize that for at least a decade, they've been pretty irrelevant as a real contending team. They've had major weaknesses. So we have to get back to the standard. We have to get back to being an actual true contender and not have these glaring weaknesses. And only thing saying that you're having a true competition is you're letting what they do at camp, what they do in the preseason games, and how they fit within the offense, the chemistry. This is Arthur Smith's offense. And we know that it requires quarterbacks throwing across the middle. Now, that's not been Kenny Pickett's strength, but nor has he had an opportunity to very much. Russell Wilson did not have a good offensive line in Denver. He threw, I think somebody said 20% of his passes behind the line of scrimmage. So that was a lot of checkdowns. We know Russell Wilson's strengths is throwing outside the numbers to his receivers and the deep ball. So we're going to have to see who fits best within the offense. But to me, this year is less about the quarterbacks because there's no long-term answer in that room. It's more about the roster and getting the roster ready for that next long-term, hopefully franchise quarterback. But those are very hard to find.
Right. No, I understand all that. For me though, I just think that when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I've learned quite a long time ago that it's not what they say, it's what they do. They can come out and say that, they're not interested in a veteran quarterback that's going to want to come in here and start and then be interested all of a sudden in Russell Wilson. And then all of a sudden, are signing him and bringing him in before even the start of free agency. When I said, when I mentioned also that he's getting paid $39 million, regardless if he's on the field or not. If he's not given the opportunity, or if it's, the other quarterback's job to lose, that's not really an opportunity or competition if it's somebody else's job to lose. Right. So why put yourself in a position where it's somebody else's job to lose when all he has to do is wait? I mean, if Kenny Pickett doesn't go down and it is his job to lose, and let's just say he, reproduces what he did last year in preseason and in training camp, and he becomes, the guy. If somebody goes down somewhere else, you're just going to have a bigger or worse situation in the locker room. He's going to want to leave. He's going to want to get traded, this or that, especially if there's multiple opportunities for him to be the starting position quarterback, when another quarterback goes down, because it's just a matter of time. It's not if, but when it comes to the NFL and all 32 teams. So, to come in and sign a contract at this point, I get what the Steelers are saying. But like they've said a lot of different times, they even said that they wanted Mason Rudolph back. They talk glowingly about him, and I believe that they didn't, give him an offer.
They
and meet with
invited him
until,
in Sunday,
right, until the day
and
that they
they
to
talked
Russ.
to him. And I mean, you're not going to get Mason Rudolph for 1.2.
No.
And I think that they probably laid it out there and decide, letting him know what their plans were. And then because I think that when they told him they wanted him to be part of the future plans,
right.
It was going to be come back, compete with Pickett. But when they see that they could get Russell at 1.2 with all the other needs and the way they need the cap space, and I think that made up their mind. I think it was probably they just talked to Rudolph, let him understand the situation, see if he would be interested in even coming in to compete in the competition. Because like I said, right now the Steelers have the cheapest quarterback room in the NFL. They can sign Rudolph and bring him in and let him compete. But I don't think he has no interest in doing that. I wouldn't. And so I figure that he's probably already had discussions with other teams, his agent. And so he has a plan. And I think that was probably just cordial. Hey, we appreciate it. We wanted you to be part of this, but then this opportunity came up. And, it is a business. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, when it comes to Mason, I don't think there's any possibility unless it's a situation like last year where nobody gives him any opportunity, even to be a backup. I think at this point, given everything that was said, how many times they said that they wanted him back. And, I was listening to another Steelers sports media who has, I guess, some contact with Mason, and apparently they hadn't even offered him anything. I mean, for them to go and say, hey, this is the guy we want. We want a competition between Kenny and Mason. We want it to be that competition, and bring in somebody else and offer somebody else a contract before the guy that was the incumbent quarterback that led them to the playoffs kind of says a lot about what really, what they're saying and what they're doing most of the time, especially right now. It's probably two different things.
Well, everybody sees that Rudolph was a Colbert guy. And Colbert's gone. So right. I mean,
so is Kenny.
What even caused the Steelers to do what they did? It was kind of like the Kendrick Green situation going to Mason Cole. When the predecessor is historically bad within a system, as Kenny Pickett has been within Canada's system, anything that comes along that's functional looks like an all-pro. So what we got from Mason Rudolph looked to be, it was a small sample size, but we were all amazed just to see touchdowns and points on the scoreboard. Mm-hmm. But when they went back and they actually started looking at it, they're like looking at the quality of the defenses that they went up against, looking at the sample size, looking at the long-term potential. They're like, well, we're gonna have to go another direction. Bring in some new faces, which I thought they would. I just didn't think it'd be Russell Wilson. But I think that, the handwriting was kind of on the wall. But everybody, everything's split in Steeler Nation. You got half people love somebody, half people hate him. And that, at one point, the majority of people didn't like Rudolph and didn't want him back there. But after he, played really well towards the end of last year, then everybody jumps on the bandwagon. But see, the Steelers front office can't do that. They have to look at it and grade on what they think and make their judgment on what they think can happen moving forward. Mm-hmm. And they made the decision to go with Russell Wilson. Now he's a Steeler, regardless if I wanted him to be or not. So I'm going to have to support him. And I want to see what they're going to be able to put around him. Because in the long run, whoever eventually has success in Pittsburgh at quarterback is going to have that surrounding cast that they don't have right now.
Yeah, and my argument wasn't that, Mason is better or Russ is better. My argument is that the Pittsburgh Steelers were very vocal about what Mason Rudolph did and his accomplishments at the end of the season. And they were very vocal about their intentions of re-signing him and bringing him back. And yet when it comes to their actions, from what I understand, is they didn't even, offer him any type of contracts. I think they didn't speak to him until after they spoke to Russell Wilson. And so my train of thought goes there is that, what difference is it if they're saying that, one thing? It appears that that's not the case. And, when it's the owner that's going out there and speaking to the media, to me, it kind of seems like, the message that's being put out there is maybe not 100% the truth. And it might be to elude, or, it's strategic. So that way other teams don't find out. Maybe perhaps
well, there was a lot of head games.
Yeah.
There was a lot of head games with this whole quarterback situation.
Mm-hmm.
I said that last week. I thought Khan was, by releasing information, which the Steelers usually don't do, that they were interested in Russell Wilson and that they were sticking with Kenny, giving him, the opportunity to compete for that number one spot as starter. I thought they was trying to force Mason's hand. I don't know if it was for contract negotiations to get his price where they wanted it. But they were definitely playing all three guys against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, in my opinion, I think that what it probably ended up was some sort of smokescreen to the rest of the NFL. Maybe perhaps there was a push for a Justin Fields. And, they wanted to show the Chicago Bears that, hey, we don't need that guy. We have Mason Rudolph or whoever it may have been. Oh, no. Are you seeing that on the side there?
Yes.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right. So we're having a problem on Facebook. So Facebook.
Yeah, it's just Facebook. I was just trying to clear it.
Yeah, I just did it. I was just making sure it wasn't on us as well. So, yeah, I just think that I forgot where I was going, to be 100% honest with you.
Yeah, that was distracting.
Yeah, that was. I apologize to everybody that's listening in. For me, though, when I got the word that it was going to be Russell Wilson, I'll be honest, I wasn't the biggest, fan of the move. I thought Russ is older. He's 5'11" or 5'10" according to the books, but apparently I think he may be even smaller than that. And he, like you mentioned, there was the locker room issues. There's the not throwing over the field.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and since the Steelers signed him, I started looking at some film and tape on the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson, and he don't throw over the middle.
It's harder for the shorter guys.
Yeah,
it really
exactly.
Is.
And a lot of the stuff that he did was on the move, kind of getting out and making something happen out of nothing. And, he's going to be 36 years old. I don't know if that type of, formula is going to be successful throughout a 17-game season, given his size, his age. And, I'm concerned about the choice there. But I do think that this is going to open up the opportunity for the Steelers to maybe draft a quarterback earlier than we may expect in the draft. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think they have so many. I mean, I was talking to Sean Gurley, Big G, one of my podcast partners today, and they have like 7 to 9 starting positions they got to fill. Well, they've signed a quarterback. Don't know if it'll be the starter or not, but they signed a quarterback with starting potential, and they signed a punter. Cameron Johnson, I think is his name, from the Eagles. So that's 2 of the positions. They got so many holes that the way I'm looking at it, we're talking at least 2 or 3 rookies are probably going to be starters sooner than later this year. It's the definition of a rebuild. But they had a really good start last year. And if they have another strong offseason like that this year, they could be in good shape. Because of that, unless they acquire new picks, it's hard for me to imagine them picking a quarterback sooner than the 4th round. Because I think center is going to come down to the draft. And they got to have a center. They don't even have one starting capable right now. They're talking about wanting a wide receiver, which I think it makes sense. Free agency, you could get your strong safety. But how are you going to get your cornerback? They need another middle linebacker. I mean, there's so many positions that I just think that this year they're going to bring in some later pick or even a free agent, a quarterback to be that emergency number 3, camp arm kind of. And I think they're going to focus on the roster this year and worry more about the quarterback next year. I think it's one reason why they did only the 1-year deal with Wilson.
Well, that would make sense. I know. But to the same extent, do you think that, they kind of did that with Pickett, and Ben Roethlisberger? They waited for him to retire and kind of put themselves in a position where they needed to draft a quarterback in that specific draft that may not have been the best quarterback class as far as draft picks go. Maybe perhaps they learned their lesson from that, get somebody.
But that was on Colbert. Colbert picked Rudolph to be that guy. And he had a first-round grade on Rudolph, which was, in my opinion, insane. But anyway, he did, and they had him in the wings all that time, even when Ben left. But by the time Ben left, then they'd lost all faith in Rudolph. Mm-hmm. So, but what I'm saying is they did try to bring in somebody. They did later round picks like with Dobbs, which I like Dobbs as a backup, but he was never a starter. The guy that was the hope to be the starter after Ben was Rudolph. But then the only person that had faith in Rudolph to do that was Colbert. So once Colbert was gone, then that's why they pulled the trigger on Pickett, which, at this point, it doesn't look good. So, I don't know who's there. Let's say late. Let's say even if they went second round, what quarterback? If you get Bo Nix, he's the same as having a Kenny Pickett. Penix maybe but Penix. You probably have to get Penix early second round. He has a lot of positive traits. He's kind of injury prone, just like Pickett. And then it'll a lot to depend on. See, that's why they got to strengthen the offensive line. So I just don't think that they're going to focus a lot on quarterback now that they brought in Wilson.
Well, they do need to fill in that one position, and Wilson to me isn't a guy that's going to be the future guy. Obviously, at his age and his contract, he's got a 1-year deal. So I don't foresee him being the future. And if he ends up being the starter come week 1, then I don't think that the Steelers foresee Kenny Pickett being the future either. I think that, do they see him as being the future now? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think that they hope he would have been. I think they hope that he turns out to be something. But that hope is with every player that they acquire. I think that they hope that Mitch Trubisky could have played well. I don't think that they thought that he was going to, be a turnover machine. That wasn't the thought when they acquired him or made the quote unquote competition in that situation too. And, I think they thought and hoped that he would get better throughout as he played, and it didn't work out. And so I digress.
One thing I'm noticing with all these signings today, it looks like a weak draft in certain positions. Running back is a lot of guys that are more system guys or, not starters. Not first round guys for sure, like last year. And then tight end. So if you look at all these signings today, free agency, a lot of tight ends and running backs. And we're not seeing, the guys you're seeing at other positions are higher up the food scale, proven guys, bigger contracts. But you're seeing a lot of smaller deals for tight ends and running backs. So I think there's still some guys there in that free agency that the Steelers could really look at, like at inside linebacker, strong safety, and I do believe there's going to be one big ticket guy. I just ain't sure where yet.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the defensive side and the other positions here in a brief minute. But one last question I wanted to ask you is: have you seen Russell Wilson's Twitter account?
I really have not paid any attention. I seen his wife, Sierra, I think.
Uh-huh.
She commented something, and it popped up on my phone for some reason
So
about her, him coming to because everybody's like she's not going to fit in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I don't know who she is, but I have not seen his Twitter or his Instagram.
So he put up last night a picture of himself, one of those Photoshop with the uniform on.
Uh-huh.
So he has a picture of himself with the number 3. So apparently he's going to be number 3 with the Steelers uniform on. And he posted up a little video clip with Renegade playing, and it's the fans waving the flags, and it ends with the jig is up, the news is out, they finally found me, and then it stops right there.
Uh-huh.
Kind of talking about like, hey, I'm gonna be the guy. I like that, man. I don't know what he's gonna do. I don't know if he's gonna pan out or not. I have my doubts in certain places, but I kind of like that kind of notion. It speaks confidence.
I am rooting for him. I mean, like we've said, and I know we both agree on this.
Uh-huh.
Everybody in Steeler Nation agrees on this. I want to see a competent offense.
Oh, yeah.
We finally got rid of the offensive coordinator. We brought in a guy that I think has a plan. He has the offense. If he has the talent, it's proven at the NFL level, something Canada never had. So I just want to see a competent offense and a more balanced roster. And I think that Con and them, they all want the same thing that we do. And that's what the plan is for this offseason. And I'm still very excited that a lot of the guys I'm hoping the Steelers can get are still available. And I'm glad that, they're not necessarily first wave guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see which move they go. We're going to be talking more about the moves that they did make, or perhaps the move that they made so far outside of Russell Wilson, and the moves that they haven't made yet. After a couple of words from our sponsors. If you're on the YouTube side, don't go anywhere. It's just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. We're talking about the free agency frenzy that's been going on. The Steelers have signed Russell Wilson, a 9-time Pro Bowler, 1-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time Super Bowl appearances. Pretty has a story history, and not such a great one as of recent, but he's now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so we'll see how that pans out. But before we move on to the other positions, do you have anything coming up at stillcurrentnetwork.com, Shannon, that you want to promote?
No, actually, my next article is tied into the free agency, and I was kind of waiting to see. I probably won't write a Russ Wilson article because everybody's going to be writing about Russell Wilson, and when I do mine, it'll be later on down the road. So, there's one guy in particular I'm looking to see if they have the interest in that I think they do. And that's my plan for my next article this week. But nothing's happened with him yet, so I'll just kind of keep that under the hat.
Guys, check out stillcurrentnetwork.com. Once the tight end stuff figures itself out, Shannon will be writing an article, and you can check out all the other audio-only podcasts that are out there, including my own, which comes out on Friday at stillcurrentnetwork.com and anywhere else you find your podcasts. So one last thing before we move on from the quarterback. How big of a statement is it going to be for whoever takes the first snap, in the first meeting or OTAs or whatnot, when they come together for the first time at the quarterback position?
Just the way the Steelers have done things in the past, I would assume that it's going to be Pickett take the initial at camp, the initial snaps, then Wilson, and then whoever the third quarterback is. But I do think that with the open competition, I think they're more, when they say that, I think they're really honest about it this time, which they haven't always been in the past. I think you're going to see both guys work with the first team offense. I mean, they might do practice to practice. They might do series to series. But I think both guys are going to get reps with a starting quarterback. Because the last time they had a quarterback competition, which really wasn't one, Kenny Pickett and Rudolph really seldom ever got any reps with the first team guys. And we've seen that become a problem as the year went on. And of course, Trubisky kind of flamed out as we were concerned about. So I think that it will be handled better this time around.
Yeah, I hope so. Because the last time it didn't really work out for the Steelers or for anybody, and for me, I think it's different, right? So I think it means more if Russell Wilson is taking that first snap than Kenny Pickett, because I think that if that ends up being the case, then I don't know. I just kind of think that they're kind of leaning that direction at that point already. If it's Kenny Pickett, then I do think it's probably more of that, open competition that they're claiming that it would be. Because I do think that regardless of anything, that there is at the very least an open competition for this position. So I think that's the importance of that for me. I look forward to seeing how that goes down. So outside of that, there was a position apparently, and there's some rumors, and we can talk about that rumor. Morsi, formerly of the Bills, signed with Jacksonville. There's been some reports that the Steelers had made an aggressive push to sign him, and he's a center. And they released Mason Cole early on in right after the season ended. That's not been a typical move of the Pittsburgh Steelers when they're moving from one position to another. They typically wait until they have somebody to fill that position. If they were making a move for Morsi as bad as some indicate that they may have, was that the guy? And now what do they do?
Well, I'm going to say maybe 4 to even 5 centers that were starting capable in free agency. And I've noticed 3 of them's already, 4 counting Morris, have already been signed today. So there is teams out there that was needing the center, and they wanted to go the free agent route. Most of them are older, 30 or early 30s. I really am not interested in that. My opinion, if anything with Morris, he was going to be like a bridge guy. But I believe the Steelers have every intention of picking a center high in this draft, in the early, to get a young stud. The Steelers have a legacy at center that's unmatched in the NFL. And they've tried to just throw, stuff at the wall to see what sticks with Kendrick Green, with Mason Cole. And we've been getting very mediocre or worse results. Now is the time, especially in Arthur Smith's offense, that they need to get that next young legacy center and put him in the center of that line to be that alpha, that communicator, that leader, set the tone physically, all the things that center does. And there's 3 really good options, maybe even 4 options that could be that next guy in this draft class. It just depends on which guy and how soon you take them. So I really am not interested in a bridge center. There's a Brewer from the Titans who has a history, and he's familiar with Arthur Smith's offense. Now, I am not a fan of his because he is very small. He's under 300 pounds and like 6'1" or 2. And he gets overpowered. He's very athletic, but he's small. Now, they might consider him a bridge guy. I don't. I just think if you sign him, you're wasting money. I would rather take a Jackson Powers Johnson, a Zach Frazier, or Cedric Van Pran. You also got Barton. I think the people want him as a guard, but you also got Beebe out of Kansas. I would take any of these guys and start them as rookie because they are experienced centers, something Kendrick Green wasn't. I would do that before I would bring in a Mitch Morris and overpay him. The reports were, I seen the numbers, what he got in Jacksonville didn't impress me that much. So it's hard for me to believe that the Steelers really made a hard push for him.
Yeah, I thought that him going to Jacksonville after, talking with the Steelers, I thought that didn't mean that the meeting went as well as, those that are indicating as far as, having a push as hard as they're saying that they did for him. but I am concerned about waiting for the draft for a center. You don't know what other teams see or their their needs or where they prioritize certain needs, and sometimes some teams just get players to, you know, get one over on a divisional opponent. I mean, the Steelers were a factor in, when they traded Chase Claypool. There was a bid between the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers, I believe, and the Chicago Bears outbid because they didn't want their division foe to come in, and they ended up turning into Joey Porter Jr. So,
Yeah.
you have those type of situations. In fact, I think the Bengals had jumped in front of the Steelers in the draft to get Willie Jackson one year, and we still ended up with Artie Burns. So those type of things occur. There's no guarantee in that type of situation. So I think it's a little bit dangerous to do that.
Well, like if you go just by divisional guys,
right.
Nobody in our division really needs a center.
Mm-hmm.
If you say the AFC, a lot of the center needy teams picked up these free agents. Mm-hmm. So, you lose out on these free agents, which that's not the route I wanted to go anyway. But by the fact they got those guys, they're not as apt to spend an early round pick on one of these young, talented center prospects. So I'm happy about it myself because, like I said, it takes some of the need away from some of these teams that I thought might try to either jump ahead of the Steelers or be willing to take one early.
Yeah. And who's your favorite still? Is it still Zach Frazier?
Oh, by leaps and bounds. I like Jackson Powers Johnson. He's definitely a guy who could be a legacy center. Uh-huh. His build is he's very top heavy. And if you look at the guys that have played for many years in the NFL, longevity wise, they are more athletes. Like you'll see, you look at, I seen a picture of Pouncey and Villanueva the other day, and they've lost like 80 pounds. And, because they're natural athletes who put on weight and mass to play. But when they no longer need that, they come down to a normal body weight, which is much better on their health. Mm-hmm. And if you look at who Frazier is more a proportional build. He looks like an athletic build with his wrestling background, and then say Powers. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really high on Frazier. And he has the center mentality that he's did for 4 years at West Virginia. Powers Johnson was a 1 year kind of breakout player. And so I like the stability factor, the consistency factor, and the proven factor of Frazier. So that's why he's my choice. Now, some team might get very lucky and get Van Pran. I think it's Van Pran Granger now. I don't know when he added that to the end of his name. But anyway, he is a very athletic guy that somebody might get eventually like in the third round, which would be a bargain. But again, you're taking a risk if you wait till that third round because, as you say, somebody can get him. So, but then, like I said, there's a couple more guys kind of jumping out. Beebe from Kansas is a guy that is a real good value in those third or fourth round. So it's going to be interesting. But for now, yeah, Frazier's my guy. Everybody knows that.
Well, hopefully the Steelers end up landing one because I think that's an important position.
Oh, it is.
The other thing that I'm also assuming out of this by them not, getting a guy for sure. I mean, if Morsi ended up being the guy that they wanted, I think they would have found a way for him not to leave the building. And so maybe perhaps there's a little bit more confidence in the guys that they currently have in the building. Maybe perhaps on a Herbig or a Spencer Anderson, to be able to be a guy that if, for instance, they get into the draft and they're unable to get one of those top centers, that they'll be okay with one of these other guys. I don't know. We'll see what happens with those guys. If they end up falling out of that, how confident are you in Herbig and Spencer to fill in that position as a starter?
Well, right now I'm not because I like Herbig as interior depth. I don't necessarily want him being the starting center, that would mean that all these other plans fell through.
Mhm.
And Spencer Anderson, I think the Steelers look at him as like the ultimate depth piece. A
Mhm.
guy who could literally play all 5 positions on the offensive line and do so at a higher level.
Mhm.
But I think that his future, for him to ever get a chance to show what he's capable of at one position, I think there's going to have to be an injury
Mhm.
to where the player's going to miss substantial time, maybe 4 to 8 games, and then they're going to want to plug him in and have that consistency in that chemistry factor, and he'll get a shot. And like I said, I've had many people within the Maryland's fan base, even program, who think that he's a future center, would be his best professional fit. So we'll see. It's great to have guys like him because at the very least you got depth, but he could be like Ramon Foster and surprise us all.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be a good problem to have if that ended up being the situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is another player that the Steelers signed today. They broke the bank for this guy. The Steelers agreed to terms with ex-Houston Texans punter Cam Johnston. I think he also played with the Eagles as well. He had a over 47-yard average. I think he's a very consistent punter. Something that we haven't seen in the last few years.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Right. Exactly. So, addressing the quarterback position, only giving up $1.2 million and then addressing the punter position first. What does that tell you about the direction of this free agency? Is it going to be high value with low dollar amounts?
We was talking a little bit before the podcast started. I think that there's a couple of guys that they are really considering on that bigger ticket. Mm-hmm. One would require a trade, which I'm not going to mention the name, and the other one is just going to cost a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Then the other guys, again, strong safety you can fill relatively cheap. You could get you another inside linebacker through free agency and address it in the draft. There's a couple of positions they're going to have to double dip. Inside linebackers one, and wide receivers another. That I think they need to double dip at both positions. But I really think that Cameron Johnson is very brave because Pittsburgh is where punters go to die. I don't know if Danny Smith, but even before Danny Smith, it was cursed. The Steelers have just not had exceptional punting in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. He has been an exceptional punter. His average last year was 47.7. That's unheard of in Pittsburgh. If Harvard could kick it 40 yards, we were all thrilled. We were just scared he was going to shake it and hurt somebody in the crowd because you never knew where it was going. So I guess he's not scared of the curse of the Pittsburgh punter. What was it? Adam Sandler had a song, the Lonesome Kicker. And he used the Pittsburgh, as a backdrop and everything. And but I've always thought that the kicking positions in Pittsburgh were cursed. But I'm excited they got Johnson. I would rather pay a proven veteran, because age ain't that big a deal with a punter. Right. Bring a guy in with experience and see if he can handle the weather and see if he can handle working with Danny Smith. And if he can, I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he punted in Philadelphia for about 2 years or so with Andy Weidel when he was the general manager there.
And that's bad weather.
Yeah, and that is.
Well, he started with the Texans, I think.
I think last season he was with the Texans. But
was that how it was? Okay.
Yeah. It says here he averaged 47.7 yards last season for the Texans.
Well, that's in a dome, so that's
in a dome. So he gets an extra. Was like half a yard distance? So it makes sense.
At least, yes.
I think that it's going to be probably one of those unforeseen or overlooked kind of moves that the Steelers made just because it's a punter, it's a position that it goes underappreciated until there's a botched kick, and then
exactly.
then everybody's eyes are on what happened, right? Yeah. So if he can be consistent and he can be that guy, and flip fields, I think that's going to do wonders for this defense. That's going to help out the Steelers offense, all across the board. So I'm glad we signed a guy. We needed to.
Yes.
He may not have been the guy that I was hoping to initially. He ended up going with the Chiefs, but 47.3 yard average for his career, 47.7 yard average last year. That's no joke. You know what I mean?
Oh, he was very consistent. And as you say, there is stats on how many shanks, these guys have. And he was very consistent, but it's easier in the dome. But as you said, he has kicked with the Eagles, and there's some bad weather there for sure. So, I like I like that signing. So far, there's not a lot I can complain about. Like I said, I'm going to be rooting like crazy for Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of people were talking about Queen.
Yeah.
Patrick Queen. I am not interested in Patrick Queen, and I've said why in the past. I think he was an underachiever. They got Roquan Smith, and then you've seen, where he had just had the freedom to run around like a madman, and he was more effective in that defense. But he won't have that in Pittsburgh. There's no Roquan Smith in Pittsburgh, so I'm not interested in him. If there's a high-ticket linebacker, inside linebacker, I like Willie Gay. And if not Willie Gay, Devin White, which would be even cheaper. So you don't have to throw too much money. Somebody's going to throw too much money at Queen, and I think they're going to be disappointed.
I agree with you. Unless it's the Steelers that end up throwing too much money, then I'm going to say it's a smart move.
I hope not.
It could be, but I think the Steelers are going to get one of these names in the inside linebacker position. It's a hole in a position that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been looking to try to fill since they lost Ryan Shazier several years ago to his unfortunate and horrific accident that he had against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, it's hard to recover from that.
Yeah. And I mean, they go out there, they get Devin Bush in the same draft that Devin White was drafted in. And initially, he didn't look like he was going to be the bust that he turned out to be. He ended up getting a leg injury, and I don't know what happened. He went from being a guy that was not afraid of contact and, being in the pile, so to speak, to somebody that looked like he avoided contact, and it just didn't work out for him. So the Steelers need to fill that position. I'm looking more towards, I like Devin White. I like, was it Baker is it Miami?
Yep. The Dolphins. Yes.
Yeah. I think
very athletic, young, talented guy. Yes.
Yeah. I think that those two guys can be guys that can come in there and help out, especially be that athletic, but also can hit type of player. I mean, Quan Alexander was doing amazing. I think if he didn't get hurt, he would have been some kind of like probably the mold of what you're looking for. A guy that's got speed, a guy that's going to go up there and hit and isn't going to be a liability when it comes to the passing game. So I think that this position is definitely going to be addressed in free agency. When it'll happen, I'm not sure. When do you expect the next, signing to happen? You think there's going to be another one today, or you think it's going to be tomorrow and moving forward?
Yeah, with everything going on right at the moment, of course, I wasn't expecting that late last night either. So, but I would expect tomorrow or even Wednesday, because there's the big ticket guy is going to be a corner or an inside linebacker is what I'm thinking. And there's some guys out there that would fit. So I think that they're trying to see, they're probably negotiating with multiple guys right now at both positions. There's really only one big ticket cornerback left that I would like to see him, and that's Snead. But they would have to trade for him, and then you're looking paying him $18-20 million a year. But again, if you put him and Joey Porter Jr. as your starting cornerbacks, it's going to improve your pass rush. It's going to change everything the way you play on defense. But they got to get that number 2 guy of quality. Now there's some guys cheaper, that are still out there. Dory Jackson and guys like that. So we'll just have to see what happens. But I think that they're in the negotiating period now. So I'm figuring it's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday before we hear about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I don't think we're gonna. Well, unless it's one of these linebackers, I think that's the possibility. If they get a big ticket guy, they might sign somebody late tonight.
I'm ready. Sooner the better.
Yeah, me too.
I'm anxious.
I want to see who it is. So, last question before we call it a show: Are you gonna buy yourself a Russell Wilson number 3 jersey and support him throughout the season with it?
No. Now I'm rooting for him. I'm going to support him, but no jersey. Everybody's already talked about it. And I hope if it works out in the Steelers draft, Zach Frazier, I will be getting the jersey.
Nice. Now, what number do you think he'd take? What is he right now?
Oh, he's 54.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's 54. So, I would. I'd have to get that one.
Yes, sir. If Russ does well, I might get one where I might hit up Brian for one of his special jerseys that he gets. I don't think I'll get one of those NFL approved $300 ones.
But the thing is, what if Wilson comes in and he exceeds our expectations, and then the Steelers are like, "We're going to give you a 2-year contract," afterwards. I mean, anything can happen. But the bottom line is we all want to see the Steelers win. We all want to see them score points finally and be successful. So whoever wins the starting job, I'm rooting for him. Whoever's the backup, I'm rooting for him. I just want to see improvement.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like Art Rooney said, that's the one thing that, sort of held back the Steelers, or not so much held back, but one thing that he said about the last part of the season was that we were able to see what this offense can look like with quality quarterback play. And if we can get just that quality quarterback play, I think he can do, he can be all right. I mean, Russell Wilson, my understanding, wasn't the guy that they initially wanted in Denver. I think they wanted to get, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh,
that's why they got Nathaniel Hackett, and it didn't work out. And so they ended up getting Sean Payton, who didn't want him either. So he was in a place that was just kind of doomed to begin with. So maybe a fresh start here. He can perhaps, rejuvenate his career. I mean, he could have a, Kurt Warner type of ending to his career where
even Joe Flacco last year, freaking off the retirement couch, unibrow, Bert and Ernie comes out and takes the Browns to the playoffs. And, I mean, it can happen. Wilson can have a big year, and he can be the talk of the town, Pittsburgh darling. And, hey, I'm rooting for it to happen. I just want somebody to play like an actual, honest-to-God NFL quarterback, in Pittsburgh. It's been a while.
Yes, it sure has. And hopefully we'll be able to get to see that much sooner this year, as soon as things kind of dwindle down. But stick tuned with us. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell, because as breaking news does come out, whether it's on the audio only side or on YouTube side, I believe the guys, they'll break it out here on YouTube as well. So you'll be able to catch that. So make sure you ring that notification button. That way you're not just getting notified of our daily lives. You also get the videos in between of the breaking news. With that being said, Shannon, take us out.